Hi everybody. I think it's 4, so I'm already going to start, although you're finding your seats. I'm Anika. I'm working as a senior expert for digital technologies at the Future Energy Lab of the German Energie-Agentur. And open source software has been a topic in the background for us. But approximately 2 years ago, we started to approach the topic more systematically, include this more in our work. But since we got closer to it, there have been a lot of questions that raised for us. I'm very happy to be here today. This is my first time at the LF Energy Summit, and I'm happy to be here to discuss the questions we have with you and to discuss how we, as the German Energie-Agentur, can play a more important role in promoting open source software. And just to let you know in the beginning, I would be happy if you have any questions to raise them in between. I don't really need to be here and talk to you for 30 minutes straight, but if you have any questions, just raise them, and we're also going to have some time for discussion in the end. To give you a little bit of context, I'm shortly going to talk about the German Energie-Agentur and about the Future Energy Lab. So the German Energie-Agentur is a public company by the federal government. We do a lot of projects right now. We have more than 100 projects in different areas in the energy sector, from future energy supply to mobility, climate neutral buildings, energy efficiency, and digital technologies and startups. What we do in our project is also very different. That can reach from consulting for the government, so for the ministries, to actually taking the role as an intermediary between politics, industry, and science. But we also do a lot of stakeholder dialogues, think tank work, and pilot projects in which we frame ourselves as the enabler of the energy transition. And an important part in this is the digitalization of the energy sector, and this is what the Future Energy Lab is working on. So on the one hand, it's a project, and on the other hand, it's also a place where we can bring people together, and not just people from the energy sector, but also from the digitalization sector, so that we have the two of them work together on solutions. And it's also the place where we work with our startups. We have a co-working space in there so that we can also bring together not just established players and startups from all sectors, or the energy and the digitalization sector. What our focus here is also, it's future technologies, how we call it. So we, as a think tank, like to think ahead, what is possible, what should be looked at, and what can we do. And this we do in the areas of smart city, cybersecurity, AI, energy communities, data spaces, digital identities. So we have a very broad area in which we take a look at this. And all of them have in common that we deal with digital technologies in the energy sector, and this is how open source comes in and plays a big role for us. And open source software for us is, in that regard, two different things. So first of all, it's an important part of the digitalization of the energy sector, because as some of you probably know, the German liberalized market has a lot of different actors in it. There are over 870 DSOs, so just in that respect there are multiple actors, multiple people that need to be brought together. And the picture you see here in the middle, maybe some of you know it, it's the market role model from the German Association of Energy and Water Industries. It shows what companies need to exchange data in the regulated areas of the energy market. And so you can see it's a very complex system with a lot of companies and a lot of data exchanges that needs to be regulated. With the energy transition, we also had it a couple of times today, there are more power plants, there are more consuming devices, there are more consuming devices from other sectors that come in, so it becomes more decentral, it becomes bigger with more participants, more power plants, and more devices. What we build on is existing technologies. And this existing technology, it's not flexible. It's not programmed for so many devices. It's not made for being expanded so much. So in addition to that, there are a few dominating companies in the energy sector that provide this necessary digital infrastructure. And they, again, are also not flexible. So we have vendor logins that result in slowing down the progress of the energy transition. And we don't want this limit. What we want and what we need is to be flexible, to be able to integrate every devices, every actors that are now new. So we have the need for quasi-standards and breaking up the data silos. This also came up today already a couple of times. And doing that with having the goal in mind of sovereignty and independence, we think that open source software is what we need because it's flexible and it's scalable. And the energy sector also is a sector, it's for people, right? It's providing people with energy. So from the public point of view, there's also a public welfare-oriented aspect to it. So all of that fits very well together. But then, not just thinking about the advantages, but thinking about like the practical day-to-day business with it, we gotta say open source software is still kind of a complex mystery because there are a bunch of questions that we ask ourselves because we are no software developers at the Future Energy Lab. We don't have the IT skills to work in the communities, and so we are also not active in open source communities, and it's really hard to understand, if you're not a part of them, how they work and how they're organized. And building on that, we sometimes ask ourselves, does it always have to be open source software, or can it also be open APIs or open code? I will get to that a little bit later too, so to show you what we mean by that. And adding on that, it's like, if it's not always have to be open source software, where's the line? Where do we need it? To make these questions a little bit more clear, I will tell you a little bit about how we work, so you can see how we include parts of that or parts of open source software in our projects. So the way we work is that we need partners for our project. So we have call for tenders where we bring in businesses, so startups or established businesses, and scientific partners. These partners are the ones that then are actually contributing to open source, and this is how they do it in 3 ways. They use open source software, so build on what is already there, develop softwares on what is there, keep on working on that, and then provide open code in the end. What we can do as Future Energy Lab is we can engage in communities, like for example being here today, or also other communities that exist around open source projects that are not just working on the software itself. For each of these 4 areas of work, I'm going to introduce you to one of the projects we do, so that it's going to be even clearer. So as an example to use open source software, we do this in all the projects that I'm going to introduce you to now, but the example I want to tell you here about is the project Climate Municipality Digital that we work on. The goal in this project is to demonstrate that digital technologies enable a city to become more climate friendly and save energy. To be able to demonstrate that, we partner with an actual city, with Hagen in Western Germany, and we equipped Hagen with hardware and also with software. So the hardware is different sensors in different sectors, so also in the mobility sector, in the building to collect energy data, also just in what we call the climate adaptation area, so to see how high the level of rivers rises close to the city. And all of this data is going to be brought together in an urban data platform and made available through a dashboard that everybody can look at. This urban data platform and the dashboard is open source software. We haven't developed that ourselves, but we have a partner who is a company that is providing this dashboard and this urban data platform as open source software. So their service to us is the setting up the software and maintaining it. So they have made a business model out of that. Our reasons for using open source software in this project are that we work with the city. So we don't want the city to have to work with with one company all the time. So it doesn't have to be like a vendor login if we have the software as open source software. We also need a lot of flexibility to adjust it to the needs of the city, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of sensors built in, so we need a lot of different sources be put together in this urban data platform. And the last reason is that it's a goal in our project to create a blueprint for other municipalities, for them to also be able to do it like Hagen and to use the sensors to become more climate friendly. And as we want it to be a blueprint, we also want to provide the code for the other municipalities. In respect to developing open source software, I want to introduce you to our project. It's called Data Institute Use Case Energy. So the Data Institute, it's something that the last government came up with and that they want to establish. It's not there yet, but we are helping to establish this Data Institute. It's not really clear yet what it's really supposed to be. But in the energy sector, we have a really broad project in which we get in touch with people and try to find out what the challenges are in respect to data sharing. And there's also a pilot project we do within this project in which we set up a data space, and we want to show with it that it simplifies the data exchange in use cases that we look at. In the data space, or data spaces consist of software, and the connector software that is necessary to set up the data spaces has an open source community around it. Not just one, but there are different connectors to be used. There are different open source communities around this. And in our project, we decided to use the one by the Eclipse Foundation, the Eclipse Data Space Connector, and adjusted this a little to our needs. Because, for example, we wanted to include a specific way to identify yourself that it's common to the energy sector, but that is not just included in the connector. The reason why we developed open source software here is that, as I just said, we have project-specific needs that we wanted to match, and we also wanted to other people to be able to just reuse our project or to reuse the software, because it's, as I said, a pilot project, and we also want to enable stakeholders to also use what we did and to also use data spaces as they are only used in projects right now. Provide open code is basically the natural third step to everything I said before. The project I want to introduce you here about, it's called DIVE, Digital Identities as Trust Anchors in the Energy System. The project was about setting up self-sovereign identities for devices so that in an automated energy system, the devices can identify themselves and kind of act themselves. It's our most future-oriented project, and it's the goal also to maybe establish self-sovereign identities in the energy sector. So we want to drive innovation, again, enable stakeholders to reuse the project. And as I said, it's future-oriented, so it's not just there in the market yet, and we want to foster it. Later on the slides, I will show you the links to the GitHub repositories from our projects, and the DIVE one is special here because it's the first project on our own account that the Future Energy Lab has an own repository. But since, as I said in the beginning, we are not IT skilled, there is no one maintaining this yet. So, and I will get to the problems with that a little later. Yeah, the last, or the fourth step that I was mentioning before, we engage in communities, not in the technical kind of way, but by supporting them. For example, the biggest community we engage in is the Gaia X community. It's a European-based community around data spaces with an extra community in each country and then an extra community in each sector. So it's very spread and very complicated. But the reason why we engage like this in the communities is that for example, now with the Gaia X community, in the 2 data space projects we already had, we were building upon the Gaia X standards, and we want to learn by being in this community and also support other projects that are in there and yeah, spread the idea of data spaces in the energy sector. This morning, I think it was really in the beginning, we had the quote, "Less talking, more code," which is probably very true, but less talking is also not always the solution, because code can be there, but we need to spread, people need to use it, and we think that, yeah, talking about it and having these communities also helps with that. Okay, as hinted in the beginning, it's not all that easy for us as it maybe has sounded, and it starts with us in the beginning. I said we have a lot of call for tenders. This is how we bring in partners, and it's very new that we approach this systematically, and there's always a doubt or a risk assessment on how bidders react to OSS, so open source requirements that we put in the call for tenders. And it's surprisingly, or at least surprising for me, that it was sometimes the hardest with startups to talk about this, to ask this from them, because they have other business models in mind, especially when they work with AI. With whom it's the easiest for us, it's scientific organizations, because they have an intrinsic motivation to also publish what they've been working on, so it's very easy for us to work with them on open source. So that is good. Another thing is that some of our partners being accustomed to IT services, so especially the municipalities we work with, they're not really open to do anything themselves, let's say. So we, as I mentioned, so with the urban data platform, we set it up so that a lot of that could be done in the city, in the administration itself, but it's really hard to get into like a working mode for them to actually do it, as also there's this company that is still providing the service. And then, as I said, or as I raised before, that we were wondering whether it always has to be open source, or is it not APIs or open APIs, open code, what we actually work towards as German Energy Agency. Because what we realized lately, it's really hard to give back to open source communities. As I said, it's not really us who do that, but our partners. But what we hear from them is that it's especially hard in our data space project. And is anybody of you part of the EDC community here? So the Eclipse connected on? Okay. Because this is the community it's hardest with us, or for us right now. Our partners struggle to give back anything because the criteria are so high, like to the form that it has to be handed in and to what they actually want in their product. So it feels like kind of we're running against a wall, and we have to do everything by ourselves in the open source project we have without like giving it back. And the question that we get from this is, how can we ask our partners to contribute to a community? Well, if the community doesn't really want it, and how do we know what community wants support or should get support kind of somehow? And then, actually kind of like the opposite of what I just said is that it's really easy for us to provide open code. But what we're asking ourselves is, well, what is the added value if we just provide open code? if it's just there. Yeah, so to sum it up, we think open source is really important because it lets the energy sector, or it could let the energy sector be more independent or more sovereign. The most easy way for us to contribute is by provide open code. But yeah, as I just said, we are wondering, is there any added value in that if we just, I just said, put it on the internet? And then there's the, for us, somehow black box open source communities. And I would be really happy to hear from you some of your experience as working in a community. Maybe you can give us some hints on how it maybe usually works and what you would expect from us as Future Energy Lab, maybe on how to contribute to open source. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm just going to hand the microphone to you. That's easiest.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was interesting to see like you coming in from a public sector perspective, which is not necessarily what we are most used to. I mean, excluding utilities, which are like partly publicly owned. My question would be, when I look at what you're presenting here, you're presenting from the perspective of having a pilot that goes open source. I suspect that probably your motivation is also to have some sort of standard later. As in, like, you know, if what is done in a pilot becomes standard practice later, then maybe like that's what you're eventually aiming for in the end, because that means when you replicate municipality by municipality, then like all the suppliers will be happy with this happening. My specific question is, what's your intention with the pilot? Is it to bring people and industry actors together to define like what a good standard would be? Or is it a proof of concept that shows that something works? And then I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay, maybe I'm going to try the second microphone then. Yeah, so I think our goal is both, and depending on the project. So, for example, the DIVE project I mentioned with the digital identities is definitely also the idea of to have a proof of concept. But then again, we also don't want just to prove the concept, but we would like to the market to adopt it, so to build on it. So, yeah, both. Wait. Test. Yeah.
And then the second question, then, because you said you want to have market uptake afterwards, would be if, like, for example, the standardized interface was the bit that was very important from an open source perspective and maybe not so much the code implementation, would you, in the way you tender, like, also encourage the recipient of the grant to like bring together industry actors in some sort of standardizing body so that it doesn't come from one entity that says like, here's how we've done it, like please come and criticize, or just don't because you don't care, or like give us specific budgets for others to interact with it, incentivize the discussions within an ecosystem, and then create that community that you were talking about as being the difficult point as well.
Yeah, so our partners are usually not just one company, but a group of companies, or mostly especially a group of scientific organizations and companies already. So there is kind of a little community already with it. Does this answer your question?
Partially, as in like some of those partners would be competitors rather than complementaries. Because what I'm specifically aiming for is the place where they compete with each other. Because then this is where you multiply the perspectives. If each of them is specialized in their field and nobody competes with each other, then at best what you'll do is just making like a smooth data flow from one to the other, as long as it's only these guys being involved. Chances are, like if you look at competitors, they'll have different practices, and what you'd be happy to have is something that works across organizations that might also facilitate buy-in from community level.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think competitors is not who we have in our groups that apply together for our projects. Yeah.
I want to give you my personal answer to your two questions. The first one was, why should it be still open? I think What was missing at the beginning of the slide is the value of freedom and, let's say, trust that comes with open source software. Because let's say you would create an app for all the German people to measure their carbon footprint, whatever, however this is done, by measuring the activity. If this would be open source, I would completely distrust it. So it's actually by opening up your code, you just create trust that you don't misuse the data for AI training and a lot of other things. Most people are not aware of that a lot of data and things are just misused for a lot of bad purposes. And this can be, let's say, reduced with open source. It's not that it's totally gone. You can still, let's say, do bad things with your software that you don't tell people. But it's just about trust, especially when it comes from a public site that, it's like your personal smart meter app, let's say it in this way, right? I would not like to have there some proprietary software included at all. Like if I want to share there something, I want this completely open source. It's really about trust that this software is not being misused. And there's a lot of misuse of software that is not discussed that much. The other point is the merge of a forked project back into the main project. Best approach is you say from the beginning you want to merge it back. So you get it, you merge, you fork it, then you talk to the people, hey, we're doing this and this feature and we're planning to merge it back and get in a conversation at the beginning with the project that you want to contribute back. Because then most likely you can get in conversation around what is actually requirements, etc. So it's really about actually getting conversation right from the start that you want to do a contribution, not I see this also many times. You get suddenly a 10,000 line of code merge pull request, and you're like, no, I cannot do this. This is like insane. And also how you split it. Like sometimes you want to have like one feature here and here. You have to split this a little bit up because like newbies, or let's say not newbies, people who are not used to these workflows, they tend to make one big pull request at the end, and some features are good, and some features are not. But then you have to, let's say, reject the whole pull request on GitHub or on other platforms. This was the...
Thank you. Yeah.
Change of topic. Change of topic, though, if I may.
Yeah.
Are you finished with that conversation? You were quite deliberate about when you said open code. You didn't say open source. So you consume open source, but you produce open code. I had to Google it. I did not know this notion. It seems to be a German-specific thing. Can you elaborate a little bit about pros and cons and what this means for the uninformed people?
You mean the difference between open source and open code?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so from what I got is that open source software is really a specific term that's more specific than if you just call anything open. So open code or open APIs is just publishing the code, but not having this community aspect around it, that you work together, that you get ideas in and promote and then work together on the code, so that this community aspect is not included. This is what I got, why I differentiated it. But you were not too convinced.
From the AI summary that I read, it was like in open source, you can modify it, distribute it, you can run it, do whatever you want with the license. In open code, you just publish the code, but people at most can just look at it, can't do anything with it, which kind of defeats the purpose.
Open code is just open source without a license. Without a license. If you publish your software without license, it's open code.
All right, fair enough.
That makes it easy.
Maybe another.
I think we have 1 minute left.
Yeah. So I think what is the problem having a contribution license? I think, and you might have think if a community starts always with published code with a license, and otherwise it cannot start. So because someone has a problem, worked on it, and it said, well, maybe someone else has the same need, and I put it somewhere. And by the way, this is the terms and conditions how you can work with it or and contribute to it. And of course, building a community is extremely hard. Most open source projects actually fail. So I can tell that myself. So I started a few of them, but only very, very few, only 2 of them really survived. So from that point of view. So most of them, just nobody cares. That happens. But I think that's not such a big problem, because maybe later on people care, or the idea lives in another community. And the other thing is, you said it completely right. If you contribute to communities, do it often, do it early, with very small contributions, very early in the process. That makes it easier than just saying, oh, we have here this 2-year project and this is the code, please take it. It's difficult.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if there's anybody who is gonna have a presentation after me, because the time is over. I saw your hand, but you're having a presentation after? Okay, then, well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to be around, and I'm hoping to keep up the conversation. And just the last slide, there are the links to the GitHub repositories.